They say silence is golden, but in this house, silence could mean death. The mansion was perfect, too perfect. The kind of place that doesn't show up on any map, any database, any satellite image. And that's exactly why Nia chose it. She pressed her back against the $5,000 sofa, feeling the cool fabric against her skin. Her fingers trembled. Blood dripped from the gash on her cheek, a parting gift from the man she once loved, the man who now wanted her dead. Her breath came in shallow gasps. The wound stung, but the pain wasn't what scared her. It was the footsteps. Someone was in the house. Ho-jin appeared like a shadow materializing from darkness, tall, calm, dressed in a crisp white shirt with sleeves rolled up with surgical precision. He didn't scream, didn't reach for a weapon. He just looked at her, with eyes that calculated the cost of a human life before he even said hello. This was the Mafia's ghost, the cleaner, the man who made problems disappear without a trace. And right now, Nia was the biggest problem he'd ever encountered. "You're bleeding on the weave," he said. His voice was low, completely devoid of shock. "That fabric is hand-spun. It's harder to clean than a crime scene." Nia forced herself to meet his gaze. "Then it's lucky you're a professional cleaner, Ho-jin. I assume the rumors about your discretion weren't exaggerated." He took one step forward, then stopped exactly 6 feet away, respecting a boundary she hadn't even realized she'd set. "You know my name," he noted, his eyes scanning her, the hoodie, the defensive posture, the way she favored her left side. "Which means you didn't break in here by accident." His head tilted slightly. "You're Nia, the woman who walked away with the Seoul syndicate's ledger." "I didn't walk away with it. I am the ledger." Something flickered in Ho-jin's eyes. "I memorized the offshore routing numbers before I burned the hard drives. If I die, $30 billion stays locked in the ether forever." She leaned forward, ignoring the pain. "If you turn me over to them, you get a thank you and a bullet for knowing too much. But if you keep me here—" "If I keep you here," Ho-jin interrupted, "I'm committing treason against the families I've served for a decade." He looked around his perfect, sterile home. "I like my peace, Nia. You are the embodiment of noise." The silence stretched. Nia's heart hammered. This was it. Her life balanced on the edge of a stranger's decision. Then Ho-jin walked to a sleek console on the wall. He tapped a sequence. Heavy floor-to-ceiling windows were suddenly obscured by reinforced steel shutters that slid into place with a hydraulic hiss. The mansion became a tomb. "You have 48 hours, Ho-jin said, turning back to her. He walked to a cabinet and pulled out a first aid kit that looked more like a surgical suite. As he reached out to clean the wound on her face, Nia flinched. His hand stopped midair. "In this house," his dark eyes locking onto hers, "you have the only person to fear is the version of yourself that decides to lie to me." He paused. "Do we have an understanding?" Nia looked at the man the underworld feared, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a different kind of shiver. Not fear, something else entirely. "We have a deal." He had two choices: finish where her ex started, or realize she held the key to his entire world. The antiseptic stung, but Nia didn't pull away this time. Ho-jin's movements were rhythmic, almost hypnotic. He wasn't just cleaning a wound, he was studying her. In the underworld, information is the only currency that doesn't lose value, and right now, Nia was a gold mine. "Why this house?" Ho-jin asked, not looking up from his work. "There are 3 safe houses within 5 miles of the waterfront. You chose the one place that isn't on the books." Nia leaned her head back, closing her eyes. "Because the safe houses belong to the syndicate, and the syndicate belongs to him." She didn't need to say her ex's name. In their world, the man who hunted her was a ghost story told to frighten disobedient soldiers. "He knows every brick, every basement in Seoul," Nia continued, "but he's afraid of you, Ho-jin. Or rather, he's afraid of what you represent. You're the only man who knows where the bodies are buried, literally and financially. Hojin paused, his fingers hovering near her temple. Fear is a poor motivator for a man like him. It's usually replaced by a need for control. He stood up, packing the medical supplies with a clinical click. You think staying here makes you a guest. It doesn't. It makes you a liability. If they tracked your biometric signature to this coordinate, my life's work, this invisibility I've built, evaporates in a single tactical strike. I disabled my trackers, Nia said, pride edging into her voice. I burned the RFID chips out of my skin in a public restroom 3 towns back. I'm off the grid. Hojin tilted his head. For the first time, a ghost of a smirk touched his lips. You burned the chips. Efficient, but you forgot the satellite mesh. Nia's blood ran cold. The syndicate uses AI-driven gait analysis, Hojin explained. The way you walk, the way you favor your left hip, it's as unique as a fingerprint. He walked to a sleek obsidian terminal and tapped the glass. A holographic map bloomed into life. Red dots pulsed along the perimeter. They didn't need a chip to find you, Hojin said, his tone turning ice cold. They just needed a camera. Nia stared at the red dots. They were closing in. They're not here yet, Hojin continued, but they're narrowing the search. You have 36 hours before the algorithm pins this house as the only statistical anomaly in the sector. He turned to face her fully. If you want to survive, you need to stop being a fugitive and start being a ghost. His eyes bored into hers. And ghosts don't have feelings, Nia. They don't have pasts. The weight of his words settled over her. Do you have it in you to disappear? Before Nia could answer, let me ask you something. If you're hooked on this story, if you want to see how far this rabbit hole goes, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next, it's going to blow your mind. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love connecting with you. Now, back to the story. Nia looked at the red dots creeping closer on the holographic map, then at the man standing in the center of his high-tech fortress. The power dynamic was shifting. He wasn't just her host anymore. He was her only hope of becoming invisible. Tell me what to do, she whispered. But there was something Hojin knew that Nia didn't, something that would change everything.
The basement didn't look like a basement. It was a cold, subterranean laboratory. Servers hummed, cooling fans whispered, everything bathed in soft blue light. This was the heart of Hojin's operation, the place where the Mafia's cleaner laundered billions in untraceable crypto assets. Nia sat at a workstation, her fingers flying across a haptic keyboard. The wound on her face had begun to itch, a sign of healing, but her mind was razor-focused on the code. Hojin stood behind her, watching lines of data stream past like digital rain. The encryption is layered, Nia explained, her voice echoing in the metallic space. It's not just a password, it's a multi-sig trigger. One part is the sequence I memorized, the second part is a physical key my ex holds. She paused. But when I destroyed the drives, I didn't just delete the data. I integrated the final decryption algorithm into a recursive loop. Her fingers stopped moving. Without me, the money is a digital paperweight. Hojin leaned in, his shoulder nearly brushing hers. The scent of sandalwood and expensive ink drifted from him. And the third part? He asked. There's always a third part in a high-level vault. Nia hesitated. She turned her chair to face him. The third part is a biometric override, not a thumbprint, not a retinal scan. She took a breath. It's a frequency, a heartbeat. Hojin's eyes narrowed. A pulse echo. That's military grade. It's more than that, Nia said quietly. It's tuned to my resting heart rate. She held up her wrist, showing him a slim monitor wrapped around it. If my heart stops, or if it goes above 140 beats per minute, like it would in a state of extreme terror or during an interrogation, the entire ledger self-destructs, permanently. Hojin let out a slow, sharp breath. He finally understood. Her ex couldn't just kill her, and he couldn't torture her, because the moment her body went into shock, the prize would vanish. She was a living, breathing insurance policy. So, Hojin mused. You are a walking bomb. He stepped closer. His hand wrapped gently but firmly around her wrist. He felt the steady rhythm of her pulse against his thumb. You're at 85. Calm. Disciplined. His gaze held hers. I like that. The proximity was electric. In this underworld of violence and betrayal, this small, quiet moment of connection felt more dangerous than a gun to the head. Nia didn't pull her hands away. For the first time, she saw Hojin not as a cold machine, but as a man who was just as trapped in his own golden cage as she was. I need you to teach me how to mask the frequency, Nia said, her voice barely a whisper. If they find us, I need to be able to stay calm enough to keep the ledger alive, even if he's standing right in front of me. Hojin let go of her wrist, but his gaze remained fixed on hers. That's not something you learn in a day, Nia. That requires total control over your own soul. He paused, heading toward a door at the back of the lab. He looked back over his shoulder. We start tonight. Learning to disappear meant trusting the one man who could destroy her with a single phone call.
The peace of the mansion shattered at 3 a.m. A high-pitched whine cut through the silence. A drone. Hojin was in Nia's room before she was even fully awake. He didn't say a word, just pressed a hand over her mouth and pulled her into the shadows of the closet. He was warm, his body a solid weight against hers, and for a second, Nia's heart rate spiked. She felt the digital warning on her wrist monitor vibrate. Breathe, Hojin hissed into her ear. Control the rhythm. Think of nothing but the air entering your lungs. She focused on his scent, on the steady rise and fall of his chest against her back. Slowly, the numbers on her monitor began to drop. Outside, the drone hovered near the reinforced glass of the bedroom window. A red laser light swept across the room, searching for thermal signatures. Thanks to the ghost protocol Hojin had initiated earlier, the room appeared empty to the drone's sensors. A perfect room temperature void. After what felt like an eternity, the whine faded. The drone moved on. Hojin didn't let go immediately. He stayed there, holding her in the dark, his breath ghosting over the back of her neck. He's impatient, Hojin whispered into her ear. That drone wasn't Syndicate. It was a private model. Your ex is acting outside the family's orders. He's getting desperate. He's not just desperate, Nia said, turning in his arms so they were chest to chest in the cramped space. He's obsessed. He thinks I'm a part of his collection, a piece of the empire that he lost. Then he's already lost, Hojin replied. He looked down at her, his expression unreadable in the dark. He paused, because the one thing he doesn't understand about people like us is that we aren't pieces of an empire. He paused. We are the architects of our own exit. Hojin pulled back, the professional mask sliding back into place. He'll be here in person by dawn. The drone was a scout. He knows the general area now. His jaw tightened. We don't have 36 hours anymore. We have 3. What's the plan? Niet asked, her voice steady. We stop hiding, Hojin said, a dangerous light flickering in his eyes. We invite him in, but we don't play by his rules. He walked to a hidden panel in the wall and retrieved a small black device. This is a signal jammer. When he enters the foyer, I want you to trigger it. It will cut his communication to his team. He'll think he has you cornered, but in reality, he'll be stepping into a vacuum. Nia gripped the device, feeling its weight. And then? Hojin's smile was cold, calculated. Then you're going to show him exactly how much it costs to break my sofa. But her ex wasn't just desperate anymore. He was coming in person, and he had 12 hours. The air in the subterranean server room was freezing, a necessity to keep the massive processors from melting under the load Nia was about to put on them. Hojin stood at the primary console, his fingers moving with a grace that bordered on artistic. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about the architectural demolition of a criminal empire. If we do this, Nia said, her voice echoing off the metallic walls, there's no going back. The moment I execute the black hole script, the syndicate's liquidity vanishes. She turned to look at him. Not just the stolen funds, their operational capital, their payroll, their laundered assets in the Cayman Islands. You'll be the man who bankrupts the most dangerous men in Asia. Hojin didn't flinch. I've spent 12 years building their monuments. I know exactly where the load-bearing walls are. His fingers continued their dance across the keyboard. In finance, as in architecture, if you remove the right pillar, the whole roof comes down. He looked at her directly. The question isn't whether I'm ready, Nia. The question is whether you can handle the weight of the silence that follows. Nia stepped up to her terminal. The black hole script was a masterwork of digital malice. It didn't just steal money, it spoofed the blockchain into thinking the transactions were authorized by her ex himself. By the time the dust settled, the syndicate wouldn't just be broke. They would think their own leader had robbed them. It was the ultimate betrayal, authored by the woman he tried to break. Starting phase 1, Nia whispered. On the screens, thousands of green lines of code began to cascade like a digital waterfall. At the top, a counter showed the syndicate's net worth. It began to plummet. $10 million, $50 million, $200 million. They're trying to counterping, Hojin noted, his eyes tracking a red warning light. Your ex's personal hackers are trying to trace the origin. They're hitting the firewall I built in Singapore. It'll hold for 10 minutes. Give me the encryption key, Nia. Nia reached into her memory, pulling out the complex alphanumeric string she had guarded with her life. As she typed it in, she felt a strange sense of mourning. This code was the last link to her old life, the last thing that made her valuable to the monsters she had escaped. By releasing it, she was becoming a nobody again, and somehow that felt like freedom. Key accepted, the computer chimed in a synthetic female voice. Phase 2 initiated. I'm redirecting the flow into a series of non-custodial wallets, Hojin said. From there, it gets chopped into microtransactions and scattered across 10,000 different accounts. He glanced at her. It's like throwing a bag of diamonds into a hurricane. No one will ever be able to piece it back together. The counter continued to fall. $500 million, $1 billion, $5 billion. As the counter hit zero, a heavy silence fell over the room. The syndicate was financially dead. Nia leaned back, her chest heaving. Her heart rate monitor stayed at a steady 78. She had done it. She had remained calm in the eye of the storm. He's here, Hojin said, his voice dropping an octave. He wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He was looking at the security feed. A black SUV had just breached the outer perimeter of the estate. The bank account is empty, Hojin said quietly, and now he's coming to collect the only thing he thinks has value left. He looked at Nia. You. The money was gone. Now all that was left was the man who thought he owned her.
The foyer was a masterpiece of minimalism, but tonight it felt like a stage for tragedy. Hojin stood at the top of the marble staircase, hands tucked into his pockets, looking down at the heavy oak doors. Nia was hidden behind a reinforced pillar, the signal jammer gripped in her hand. The doors didn't burst open. They were opened with a key, a chilling reminder that her ex still thought he owned everything. He stepped into the light. Ji-hun, followed by two men in suits who looked more like machines than humans. Ji-hun looked around the room with a sneer. Hojin, he called out, his voice echoing through the space. I expected more from a man of your reputation. Hiding a thief in a glass house, it's beneath you. She's not a thief, Ji-hun, Hojin replied, his voice calm, almost bored. She's an auditor. He paused. And I must say, your books are in terrible shape. In fact, they're empty. Ji-hun's face contorted. He reached for his phone, likely trying to check his accounts or call for reinforcements. This was the moment. Now, Hojin signaled. Nia pressed the button on the jammer. The lights in the foyer flickered once. Every electronic device in the room died. Ji-hun stared at his darkened phone screen, then looked up. his eyes wide with sudden, sharp realization. "You're trapped in a vacuum, Jihan," Nia said, stepping out from behind the pillar. She didn't look like the terrified woman from the sofa anymore. She stood tall, eyes cold and predatory. No signal, no backup, and in approximately 5 minutes, the syndicate's board of directors is going to receive a file showing that you were the one who emptied the accounts into a private wallet in your name. "You wouldn't," Jihan hissed, reaching for the holster under his jacket. "I already did," Nia said. Her voice was steel. "Hojin's servers are currently broadcasting that data on a delay. The only way to stop the broadcast is for us to manually override it. But since you've decided to come here with weapons..." Hojin descended the stairs. His presence commanded the room. He didn't pull a gun. He simply stood between Nia and the intruders. "I am a cleaner, Jihan. My job is to remove stains. Usually that means blood. But today the stain is you. You have 2 options." Hojin's voice was measured, final. "You can kill us both, and by sunrise, every hitman in the hemisphere will be looking for the man who stole $30 billion from the syndicate." He let that sink in. "Or you can walk out those doors, take your men, and disappear. I've already created a new identity for you, a quiet life in a country with no extradition." Hojin's expression softened just slightly. "It's more mercy than you deserve," but Nia insisted on a clean exit. The tension was a physical weight. You could feel it pressing down on the room. Jihan looked at Nia, the woman he had tried to break, then at Hojin, the man who had outplayed him without firing a single shot. The silence stretched. 60 seconds. The longest minute of Nia's life. Finally, Jihan lowered his hand. He looked at the floor, the realization of his total defeat sinking in. He was no longer a king. He was a man with a target on his back, and the only person offering him a shield was his victim. "The codes for the new identity are in the SUV. Leave now." Without a word, the 3 men turned and walked back into the night. The heavy doors clicked shut, and the silence returned to the mansion. The danger was over, but freedom came with a price neither of them expected.
The sun began to rise over the Seoul skyline, casting long golden fingers of light across the living room where it all started. The shutters were open again. The glass reflected a world that looked exactly the same, but it was fundamentally different for the 2 people inside. Nia sat on the edge of the sofa, the one she had bled on. She was holding a cup of tea, steam rising in the cool morning air. Hojin stood by the window, looking out at the city he had helped build. "Is it done?" she asked. "The broadcast was canceled," Hojin said, turning to look at her. "Jihoon is on a plane. The syndicate is in chaos, too busy fighting over the remaining crumbs to worry about a missing strategist and a retired cleaner." He paused. "We are, for all intents and purposes, dead." Nia set the tea down. "So what happens to the money, the diamonds and the hurricane?" Hojin walked over and sat in the chair opposite her. He didn't reach for her hand, didn't offer a romantic confession. Their bond was something deeper, forged in the fires of mutual survival and intellectual respect. "It stays in the hurricane," he said. "Neither of us can touch it without being traced. It will sit there, a digital ghost, until the end of time." He looked at her curiously. "Does that bother you, being a billionaire who can't spend a cent?" Nia smiled. For the first time, it reached her eyes. "I've spent my whole life managing other people's wealth, Hojin." She took a breath. "For the first time, I don't own anything, and no one owns me. That's the most expensive thing I've ever felt." Hojin nodded slowly. "I'm leaving the mansion," he said abruptly. "I've sold the deed through a shell company. This place is too loud now, Too many memories of someone who didn't belong here. Nia felt a pang of something, not fear, but a strange sort of curiosity. Where will you go? I have a boat in the Mediterranean, he said. No smart tech, no servers, just wind and wood. He smiled faintly. It's hard to hack a sail. He paused, his gaze lingering on her. I'm looking for a navigator, someone who knows how to read the stars when the GPS goes dark, someone who isn't afraid of the silence. Nia stood up, walking to the window to stand beside him. They didn't look at each other. They looked at the horizon. They weren't a couple in the traditional sense. They were two architects who had just finished their greatest work, their own escape. I've always been good at finding my way, Nia said, as long as I'm the one holding the map. Then let's go, Hojin said. And just like that, two ghosts found freedom. If this story moved you, if it made you think about power, survival, and what it really means to be free, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear a story about taking control of their own life. And drop a comment telling me, what would you do with $30 billion you could never spend? I read every single one. They walked out of the mansion together, leaving the luxury and the violence behind. As the door locked for the final time, they didn't look back. They were no longer a mafia boss and a victim. They were two ghosts, finally free to haunt the world on their own terms.